Okay, think about where we've come so far in Philippians. We asked the question from near the beginning, why is it important that we stand together as a church? Unity is without question the single most important quality of a church that makes it healthy or leads to failure. When a church begins to lose its unity, you begin to see, I picture it only because I grew up in Florida. I never saw a frozen lake, okay? I grew up on the ocean. It doesn't freeze. And so I went to visit a friend of mine in Maine, and we walked out on the lake. I was terrified. I could see everything below me, crystal clear, and I knew I was going to die. He said, it's 2 feet thick. I don't care. You know? And so when you see fracture lines occurring in the ice, you know you're in trouble. And so we watch very carefully as elders and pastors and staff about this church. We watch it. We listen to the things that you're talking about, the things that you grumble and complain about, even though you're not supposed to. You know, we assess that. And so that's really important. Paul says in Ephesians 4, work very, very hard to protect that unity which was brought about by the Spirit. He created it. We should never take it for granted. So as we've worked our way through Philippians, we're going to stop at the halfway point. We talked about the joy that comes from hard times. Here he is in prison, and he's being beaten. We talked about the joy of friendship, how he could trust these Philippians because they knew him. He had been there. So when he wrote this letter back to them while he's in prison, they had seen him in prison years before that and took care of him. They knew his story. We talked about the joy that's beyond suffering. Suffering tends to get our attention. When something happens, I remember standing right here several years ago telling you I had been diagnosed with cancer, right? Right here. And you all went, like that. And it's like, okay. Yeah, the suffering at the moment is hard. But what we have to learn to do as Christians is look beyond the suffering. That's what Hebrews says about Jesus, who for the joy set before him after the cross, he endured the cross. And so the suffering, and I'm just being honest, my first wife taught me that. I was a brand new Christian, not even a year when I met her. And she had walked faithfully for many years. And she taught me so much about faith, including at the very end. At the very end. One of the last things she said to me, she quoted Lamentations, God's mercies are new every morning. You don't ever have to worry, Jim. Every morning when you wake up, the slate is wiped clean. He already forgot what you did yesterday. Don't worry about it. And this is happening, and it's in your best interest. That's what Paul said. It's in your best interest that I go. She knew I was taking care of her hours a day, and she knew that by going to be with the Lord, going home, that would free me. And it did. And here I am today. All right? The joy, I couldn't see beyond the suffering. I couldn't see beyond the hurt and the loss when I said goodbye to her. But she saw it. She saw it. And so we looked at that. That's part of where this joy comes from of being human. Yes, God uses us in important ways. We talked about that in my Sunday school this morning about Job. And you have to look beyond the event to realize what God is doing. And then we talked about the joy of standing together. That's spiritual warfare. The moment we divide, we've already lost the battle. Satan is in our midst. If we stand together unified as a congregation, Satan can't get to us. We can protect each other. We talked last week about the joy of sacrificing. That's that famous passage of Jesus. Paul gives us the example of what happened with Jesus so we know how to look and stand together. And he starts off by saying, if there's any encouragement, he goes through all those if clauses, and I turn them into questions. The blessings that we have. If all these blessings are true, he says, then don't look out for your own interest. Look out for each other's interests. Stand together in unity. Have this relationship with one another that Jesus had toward us. He became a slave for our benefit. We've talked several times that I told the elders on our retreat 2 or 3 weeks ago that being an elder has got to be the most grueling leadership position in the kingdom. Do all things without grumbling and complaining. Whoever wants to be the greatest has to become the slave of all. Let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, but only word that brings encouragement to the one who's listening. Love your enemies. We can go on and on and on, quoting these verses. But to really do that, you see, a church that's happy, a church that's healthy, looks like this. Every one of you has 2 theologies. fact, every human on the planet has two theologies. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. You have what you say you believe, and then you have the way you live life. Okay? The closer these are together, the more integrity you have and the more joy you have. The more these are far apart, the further apart they are, the more hypocrisy you have and the more struggles you have. And so the greatest gift we can give you as leaders is to help you do this as a church. We all know the verse because I've quoted it 1,000 times. Do all things without grumbling, complaining. Finally, I'm in the passage today that says it. So I can beat you over the head one more time. No. But yet we all grumble and complain. Some of you love to pick on me when you hear me. Is that a complaint? No, I'm just evaluating. But this is all part of this joy. Today it's about the joy of shining brightly. And I'm just going to read it to you. This is because Christ gave us the example. Here's what it looks like, okay? What does it mean to shine brightly? In chapter 2, verse 12 and 13, therefore, my dear friends, he had just given them the whole example of Christ. As you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Okay, let me pause just for a second. Fear and trembling. When we talk about the fear of the Lord, that doesn't mean to be afraid of the Lord. Okay? That's not what it means. Exodus 19, we've talked about that many times. That's the place where they're standing at Mount Sinai. They're slaves. They just come out of Egypt. And he says, if you obey me, I'll make you a kingdom of priests. And they say, we will do that. And then he introduces himself to them. Mount Sinai begins to shake. Massive earthquake. Smoke appears everywhere. There's a trumpet that starts blaring, right? And when God speaks, it's this incredible thunder. They can't see. The whole ground is shaking. What would you do? They ran. They ran to the other side of the valley. So in Exodus 19, they're standing right at the base. They can't touch Mount Sinai because that's a holy temple. They're not ready yet. Don't touch it or you'll die. And in the very next chapter, you know where they are? On the other side of the valley. God terrified them. And Moses goes running after them. I love it. Exodus 20. You know what he says to them? He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. That command is repeated all throughout the scriptures. If you are faithful, if you're one of the ones who are a believer, do not be afraid. Then he goes on to say, God, he did this on purpose to put his fear within you. He wanted you to see how powerful he is. And that's the beginning of the journey where we talk about reverential awe, standing back at how great and how powerful and how loving and kind and generous and gracious God is. So when we talk about fear and trembling here, that's not being afraid. That's saying work out. He doesn't say work for your salvation. Work it out. Work it out with that deep sense of awe and respect at the power that God holds. Because he is sovereign. And I try to remind you regularly, he is God and we are not. And we should always remember that. Okay? But fear is not part of it for the Christian. John talks about that in 1 John. It says, perfect love casts out fear. Nobody ever quotes the second half. Because fear has to do with punishment. There's discipline in your life. There's not punishment. Those are two very different things. Okay? Very different things. And so we begin to learn that this fear and trembling continue to work not for your salvation, work it out. It's already accomplished. You are a new person because of that. But now you begin the journey of learning, what does that actually mean to be a Christian? What does that mean? I'm so thankful that 46 years ago when I gave my life to Christ, after 3 years of not sure I was going to do it, that he didn't just dump a truckload of commands on me. Now you got to do this, now you got to do that. No, that's not the way it worked. I began to follow him. And he began to woo me closer. He began to treat me differently. I began to love him. Had a conversation with a young girl recently, and she's not a Christian, doesn't have anything to do with Christianity, never been to a church. And so she has friends who are Christians, and she said, they're trying to make me a Christian. I love that imagery. They're trying to make me a Christian. I'm going to make you a Christian. I don't know how we got that imagery woven into our story, but we did. And she goes, I don't understand it. Aren't I already a good person? They said I'll be a better person if I become a Christian. I thought I was a good person. And I chuckled and I said, well, okay, your friends are trying to communicate something, an experience that's really hard to put into words. Okay? She goes, I know, but I thought maybe you could help me because I know you. And I said, all right, are you a good person? Absolutely you are. Every other religion starts with the premise that you're bad. You have bad karma. You have all kinds of, it depends on where you are in the world. And you have to work your way out of the badness. That's not true in Christianity. You're made in the image of God. And I said, you're priceless. You're already good. In fact, God said, you're very good. And you know what? I love you. And she goes, I know you do. I know you do. That's why I wanted to ask your opinion. And I said, so becoming a Christian is not about becoming a better person. Becoming a Christian, there's something much deeper at work than that. And she's a musician. And I said, when I went through music school, and I know I shared this with some of you even the last couple of weeks. When I went through music school, I went through music appreciation. And I loved Beethoven before I started college, but then I studied his life. And then I studied his theories and how he developed chords, progressions, and all of that in music school. And I began to understand a different language that I'd ever seen before. And then all of a sudden I began to understand how a person who's deaf could write 4 incredible symphonies that you all love. And so before I went to college, I had a love for Beethoven. When I got finished with college, it's like I was passionate about Beethoven. I understood things that I had never seen before. So when you come to Christ, the goal is not to make you better. The goal is to give you an experience that helps you understand. It's what we call waking up. Ephesians 2. We were dead in our trespasses and sins, but he raised us up with him. He regenerated us. I said the colors get brighter. The love is felt is deeper. And she goes, I understand what you're saying. I really like that. So don't think of it as becoming a better person. Yeah, that's kind of the fallout. The byproduct, you start loving more. But right away, you have a different mind. It's called the mind of Christ. And you can understand it. So now, as a flock of sheep, fear and trembling doesn't mean you're scared. What it means is you stand back in awe of a God who is so incredible that it's hard to describe. A love so deep and authentic that it's hard to really imagine it. Do you believe that? Do you think of God that way? I'm stunned at what we've done as a church in our culture. I think I've passed 7,000 coffees and beers up here, and I've asked the question hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. When you think of God, do you think of somebody who really cares about you and wants you to experience the greatest joy possible? That's his character, love, joy, peace, patience. Or do you think of a God just waiting for you to cross the line? I don't think I've ever had one person say, I believe in a God that loves me. They're all this. I don't know how we communicated so much judgment. I own it. I'm a pastor. I'm a scholar. I've taught lots of pastors. I have a piece of it. But fear and trembling does not mean you're afraid of God. That means that this is the all-powerful God of the universe that you can run to. You can run to. And what he was showing to the Israelites at that valley, at that moment in time, was not to be afraid of him, but what he was saying is, in the vernacular, my God is more powerful than your God. In other words, we have nothing to worry about, ever. Nothing to be afraid of. So continue to work this out. And this involves changing your mind. This is transformation. To continue this process of working it out with fear and trembling. Because it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fill his good purpose, not yours. He didn't save you so you'd be happy. That's the byproduct, joy of faithfulness. You get it for all of eternity. He did it because he has a mission. He has a purpose for you. If he just wanted to perfect you, he'd just take you home. It'd be done that fast. But no, we have a mission. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of friends out here that I care about deeply that don't yet know him. This young person I was talking to, I said, John 10, Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. I said, do you ever get the feeling somebody's just whispering your name in your ear? She goes, yeah, I do. I said, just listen carefully. You're tuning that dial, and one day that frequency is going to become clear, and you're going to hear your name. That's God. And she cried. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of friends that don't know the Lord. I'm going to expend every ounce of energy I have until, as Martin Luther says, if the Lord wants to take me, he will surely find me. And in that second, I look forward to embracing him and enjoying the rest of eternity after the hard work. That's what he's talking about. Then in verse 14, do everything without grumbling or arguing. Okay, now are you listening? I'm actually in the passage, so I get to beat you up now, okay? Think about it. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. Why? So that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Does that describe our country or not? Oh my goodness. I love the media. I love the media. I start with the premise that they got to sell something because they're making money. Okay? It's all about money, power, or sex. One of those three. Okay? I don't care which. And so just start with the premise, and now look what they do with it. Look how they distort it. When the whole question of the amphitheater came up early in the summer, you guys know about what happened with the amphitheater, town council. They're working on it. And so I got a call from all these people all over the world. My friends in Cambridge, England said, what's going on in Dillon, Colorado? The headlines in their paper in England was Civil War brewing in Dillon, Colorado. We got 963 people. We made the international news. I love it. And so I ignored everybody wanted to talk to me. CNN, Fox News, Daily. I said, I'm not even going to return the calls. But I took the Denver Post call because they're here, a local paper for our state. So the guy starts off with, why are you guys fighting the town on the amphitheater? And I said, well, I'm already confused on your first question. Exactly what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I mean, you guys got a law firm and you're fighting the town so you can get in the amphitheater. And I go, I'm really kind of curious. Where did you get your news, your information? And he said, well, I read the Summit Daily. I couldn't help it. I said, oh, this is great. One reporter getting his news from another reporter that has no idea what he's talking about. And the guy at the Denver Post said, point taken, do my own research. Let me start this over again. Are you guys fighting the town council? And I go, no, we're not even in the discussion. And he goes, what? How did that happen? And I talked about how it unfolded and the challenges that they're facing trying to write a policy. And I said, we're here to bless the county, the community. And he said, what does that mean? How do you do that as a church? Okay, we gave $100,000 to poor people through our benevolence fund, 4,000 meals to our food bank. We have a mental health counseling here for our community. If they need financial help, we help them do that. We do all kinds of things like that. And he said, you're kidding. How come nobody writes that up? I don't control the press. Can't answer that question. It was a great conversation. I have no idea what he wrote because I don't follow the Denver Post. But I love following the press, how they take things and they twist it. And they manipulate it for their own benefit, which is what? Money, power, or sex. I just love it. It is a warped generation, a crooked generation that we live in. But why is that important? Then, he says, if you learn to do this, you learn to work out your salvation with the right motivation, where we genuinely care and love each other. We protect that unity more than anything else in the world. We stick together. We take care of the poor people. If we do that, and we learn not to grumble and we quit arguing and complaining, then you will shine among that generation like stars in the sky. It's like stars in the sky. Then you'll shine. Every one of you shines at some level. And some of you have the, I'm not trying to put you down, you have the awareness to know when that's happening. How fulfilling it is to see a friend, a loved one, maybe somebody who's sick, maybe somebody who's been far away from the Lord, turn just a little bit closer to the Lord because of your love for them. You've tasted that, haven't you? Am I right? How many of you have experienced that? Let me see. Hopefully every hand goes up. Just because of your love, moving closer to somebody, you see that happening, and you feel that thrill of watching the Lord work through you. That's what it means to shine. It's going to shock you. It has nothing to do with doing good works. The world does that. We have people that don't believe in Christ doing good all over the place. It has nothing to do with that. It's the Lord, the Holy Spirit, working through you in the life of another person. The same behavior. We have several food banks in our county. If we're no different than the rest of them, let's close the doors. No, our food bank should just give a taste of authentic love. Just a taste. This is what he's talking about, working out your salvation. You know, I teach young pastors, I have for 2 decades. We all have very similar experiences. Doesn't matter what the denomination is. One of them is to get you to actually believe down at the deepest part of the soul that you can make a difference. Do you believe that? You see, when I look at you, you see what I see? I see an army. I know a lot of your professions. You're scattered all over the county doing your job. I want Christians scattered all over this county. I personally don't care if I agree with you. I want you scattered around the county because you're a Christian. And I know the Lord uses you to reflect his glory. Not because you're perfect, not because you make all the right decisions, but because you're redeemed. I love what he says to Israel. I didn't choose you because you were the largest. In fact, you were the smallest. I chose you so I could reveal my glory through you. So he took the people group in the ancient Near East that had the least amount to give, slaves. So he could reflect his glory, he could reveal his glory through them. And that's what you do. This is what this passage is all about, right here. Now I want to say something to you. Got to pull up my stool. Get to be your pastor for a second. Some of you that have been around a long time know when I pull the stool out, it's time to have a conversation. Satan is always coming after us, always. I've asked the elders more than once when we voted to start a Christian school, did you think Satan was going to sit on the sidelines and smile at us? No. He's coming at us in every way possible. Every way that you can imagine. To get us to divide. Stop. We made it through the election. I'm so proud of you guys because we didn't divide. We're still together. Some of you are happy. Some of you are sad. I get it. I just have fun watching what happens. I love watching all the promises that are being made and were made before, which are never going to be carried out. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Politics, I hate politics. My favorite makeup is I don't care which office has the president as long as the other party has the Congress. Because then they just argue, nothing ever gets done. And they leave me alone. Well, guess what? We have another little thing brewing right here in our own town. And I'm already hearing it. I watch for those fracture lines, okay? And I'm already hearing it from some of you. We have a recall beginning. A petition was signed to recall 3 of our town council members. One of them is sitting right here. One of our members. Renee's not here. I point her out too. Right here. Because we disagree with something they might have done. Really? Are we going to fight over every disagreement? Did you know our town is $4 million in debt? Dylan? This goes back long before Dana was on the town council, long before Renee, long before John Woods, long before these people were on the town council. This was a situation when I got here. Our town's been in debt. We don't have the tax revenues to keep up. So I watch these town council members, And I watched them, and I've met with almost all of them that would meet with me and talk to them at length. And you know what I've come away with? They're trying their hardest to do the best. Do I always agree? No, Dan and I have disagreed on things. I don't care about that. All I know is I have a believer sitting here. I sat with Renee for an hour the other day, and one of the other town council members, a new one that was with her, and talked it through. Every time we do a recall, it's $30,000 for our town. And we're going to fight over the little decisions instead of band together and help them. Do you actually believe as a church that of a town with only less than 1,000 people, do you believe we can make a difference? I can't influence the federal elections. I'll even try. But do you think we can make a difference in our town? We talked about this when the amphitheater kind of dissolved. That for at least a year, they're trying really hard to get it back for us. Is it worth getting a lawyer and fighting? Do we want to win the battle so we can lose the war? What did we learn from Paul in Philippi? He was a Roman citizen, and he decided not to exercise his right. He went through, Acts tells us, a severe beating. And he stayed up all night singing praises because he trusted the Lord and he didn't exercise his right. All he had to do was say, I'm a Roman citizen. They couldn't touch him. So the next morning, the town council, the equivalent of the town council, said, you're free to go. He goes, yeah, I don't think so. I'm a Roman citizen. I own you. All I have to do is file a complaint and you will be executed. He didn't exercise his right until it gave him the chance to further the gospel. We all have rights. We're Americans. I travel all over the world and I see countries where they don't have the rights that I have. They couldn't argue if they wanted to. They don't have freedom of speech. They couldn't do any of those things. I do. So the real question is, when is it appropriate for you to exercise your right? When is it? And I would argue as a theologian and as your pastor, when it advances the gospel. Do I have the right to free speech? Of course I do. What does Ephesians 4 say? Let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, but only a word that brings encouragement for the one to hear. So you're not in the same party with me. I don't agree with you at all. Is that bringing encouragement? It's not, is it? And I'm watching the fracture lines appear because, believe it or not, your vote is public. And some of you are voting for a recall because you don't like a decision. Is this an appropriate time to exercise your right? I don't say this often, but I would encourage you to stand behind Dana and John Woods and Renee and Mamira. I've talked to them and I know their character. They're trying their best. They don't get a lot of money for what they do. But they care about our town, and I care about our town. And I know dividing and spending more money is not going to accomplish anything. It's just not. So that's my political speech. So think carefully for those of you that live here. Okay? We do have some really good town council members that are trying their hardest to figure out how to keep us from going into bankruptcy. That's not in our best interest as a town. We as a church can impact that. We can make a difference. We can help. This is a good little town. Okay? So the question is, how are you going to use your rights? How are you going to work out your salvation? This is not easy. Being a Christian is not easy. Don't be fooled. It's very challenging. It's grueling work to live faithfully every day, every hour. These things are fun. Okay? This is fun. And there should be some kind of fun for what we do. We should find joy in this, and we do. But let's don't forget the harder things, too. Let's don't forget our town. For those of you that live in towns around here, well, it's too bad for you. But work hard for your town council. I'm looking at Kevin. He was on the town council in Silverthorne. And others. They're not trying to cheat us. They're not trying to defraud us. They're really trying within their ability to do what's best. So pray for them. Paul said that. Pray for them, to love them. By the way, he goes on in Philippians, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he gives two examples, Timothy and Epaphroditus, and here's what he said. Timothy, I have no one else like him who shows you genuine concern. Nothing about Paul's been all over the world, and this is his summary. I have no one else like him. Then he gets to Epaphroditus, who is sick. He longs for all of you because he is distressed because you heard he was ill, and he was. He almost died. See, this is the attitude of what it means to work out your salvation. These are examples. We have them right there in chapter 2. Go read it. Study these people of the faith. Dana, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for Renee Amir. I'm grateful for John Woods. I know the others too. You can name them all. I'm grateful for them. They're trying their best. Let's try not to make this a fight, okay? Let's empower them to do what's in our best interest. Get us out of debt, okay? Just work hard to get us out of debt. Sorry to put it on your shoulders. Father, thank you for, it's even hard to describe how in a world that's so warped and crooked and messed up, convoluted, backwards, upside down, and you still use people like us to reflect your glory. I'm astonished every time I think about it, every time I observe it, every time I see it. But you use us for your own glory, for your purpose, that the world might know that you are the one true God who loves so deeply, who loves so generously. Thank you for the privilege of being called your children, but even more than that, thank you for the privilege of choosing to partner with us to make this a better place. Give wisdom to our town council, Lord. Help us to come back together and stay united as a little town, and let us shine like stars in the night, shine brightly. Thank you, Lord. In your Son's name, amen.